Imagine walking away from Blockbuster back when it was still on top, well before the days of Netflix. Then watching the dot-com crash basically wipe out the ground from under you. Then sitting across the table from bankruptcy with a growing family counting on you to figure it all out. Most people would call that a string of bad luck. My guest in episode 5, Michael Carnes, calls it a career. Michael left stability behind. He bet on himself. He was an early pioneer in an industry nobody was paying attention to back at the beginning of the century, and that's data centers. And today, these same data centers power AI, the cloud, and basically the modern economy. But this isn't a story about getting the timing right. It's about what you do when the timing goes completely wrong. You keep showing up anyway. 3 decades of risk, resilience, and reinvention. This is episode 5 of the Grit Mindset Revisited. Let's get into it and stay gritty. This is Matt Rosen, and this is the Grit Mindset with me, your host, Matt Rosen. The mission of the Grit Mindset is to inspire and empower listeners by delving deep into the journeys of those who have faced significant challenges and emerged stronger. Through authentic conversations, we uncover the mindsets, strategies, and lessons that have propelled these individuals to overcome adversity and achieve success. My aim is to provide actionable insights and real-world advice to help our listeners cultivate their own grit and navigate their personal and professional lives with confidence and resilience. Hello, and welcome to the Grit Mindset. I'm your host, Matt Rosen, and today we're going to be talking with my good buddy, Michael Carnes. I've known Michael for over 25 years and excited to have him on the show. He's had a very successful career as a data center executive. He's gone off on his own recently. So today we're going to delve in, learn more about him, hear his story, and all his experiences being gritty throughout this fun process. So Michael, welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about you.
Thanks, Matt. I'm Michael Carnes. My company is Strategic Development Consulting. I started in data centers in 98. After leaving a little company, most people, depending on your age, may or may not have heard of Blockbuster, and did my first startup, which I think that's where you and I kind of met, and tried to get out of it a couple times and just been blessed to still keep staying in the data center space.
So I guess you're pretty glad you made the move from Blockbuster to data centers
Yeah.
at the right time.
Yes. Yeah, it was interesting because I think back, I told my wife, who was also working at Blockbuster, we wanted an investment. They said, no, we don't think that's a good investment. I told my wife, I think this is going to start pivoting and change. We both had gotten married and just moved here from Fort Lauderdale. So I said, too many eggs in the basket. And I went and did my first startup, which had about 10 people.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we'll delve into some of your professional career as we go on, but it'd be great if you could share just a little bit about your early life and just, kind of the experiences you shaped that the guy you are today.
Let's see. Not originally from Texas or Florida. Grew up in North Carolina and went to East Carolina. And then after I graduated, I decided I wanted warm weather and work on my tan and meet a lot of beautiful people. So I moved down to Fort Lauderdale, which I met my wife working. She was working at Gold's Gym and I was working out. And we dated. Did probably the craziest thing about something interesting. I got married, changed jobs, and relocated, and did all of it in about 30 days.
And those are like the most stressful things in anyone's life, and you did it all at once.
I did. I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm just going to get it out of the way.
Now that's some grit right there from an early age. So how would you say, your upbringing, how did that influence your approach to challenges and setbacks that you face throughout your personal and professional life?
I mean, it's funny. I have an interesting story I tell most people. Growing up in North Carolina, it's different. And I actually grew up in rural North Carolina. And I knew early on I wanted a different life.
Yeah.
So it's always funny just chatting with people about you'll meet people in life. They have hard things going on. Everything happens for a reason. And I think, people come along in your life that helps put you on the straight and narrow and your life turns out better.
Yeah. Any specific influences or individuals that helped shape the direction you took?
There were a couple. Obviously my dad. My dad left my mom at a young age, didn't know him. And When my mom passed away, I had a chance to move in with a bunch of relatives. Could have lived in Santa Barbara, New York, a couple others, and I chose to move in with my dad and have a relationship, which helped put me on the straight and narrow and guide. And then I think back from a business standpoint, when I left Blockbuster, I started working at Data Return, which I think at one point you had talked with those guys. And I worked for the gray hair who created the business plan for Sonny. And he kind of took me underneath his wing and kind of guided me. I'd never done a IPO or anything. So he's, Carnes, when we IPO this, do not go margin call this. Do not do it. If you're going to sell it, if you're going to buy something, buy it with cash. So kind of stuck with me and helped give me a lot of good direction and guidance.
Yeah, well, Data Return had a great run, and Sonny's a friend and a mentor to me, and sounds like he was to you as well.
Yeah, he was.
Great organization, kind of a pioneer in the space. So what does, we're here on the grit mindset. I've got my definition, but I always like to ask our guests, what does grit mean to you, both professionally and personally?
For me, professionally, grit, the grit thinking through, as we were talking earlier about coming on this, it's really just persevering, right? I can tell you the thing that most people don't realize as you're going through life, it's going to get tough. It's going to get difficult. And just being able to persevere. I was talking to a CEO yesterday, and we were talking about how when I interviewed people, especially salespeople, when you're interviewing people, everyone gives you all the right answers and they're perfect. It's not until things are imperfect that you really find out the character and who people are. And I think life's going to have a lot of challenges, both professionally, personally, family members, friends, jobs, careers. I look back on it, and when you're in them, I always tell people it seems hard, but later down the road, you'll come back and look at it and count your blessings because it was a pivot for you.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing a story with us, maybe an obstacle you faced, a hard time, the steps you took to overcome it, and what you learned from it?
Obstacle I learned. Probably the biggest one is probably with Data Return.
Yeah.
Right?
Tell us about that.
We, when I left Blockbuster, again, small company, 10 people, Sonny was wearing shorts, t-shirt. It was very casual. Mike was trying to find his shoes underneath his desk. It was interesting to kind of go through from 10 people to about 1,200 people in a very short time period and still maintain those relationships.
Yeah.
As you did it. And it was interesting. You did get a chance to see the character, right? People that came in for the right reason. And professional managers started to show up, right? People that worked at American Airlines, want a bigger base and everything else. So that was kind of interesting ride. And, just thinking through all this stuff, just the biggest challenge that we had going through there was after we IPO'd the company, the internet bubble burst. I saw a lot of good friends lose things, right? They, kind of got over leveraged. And then I watched us buy ourselves back, redo the company, and then go back at it again. But probably the hardest obstacle was I had just, let me think, we were having our second child. We were getting our second house. And I learned a little thing about bankruptcy I never knew, that, sometimes when companies bankrupt, they take commissions and they just remove them.
Yeah, that can be pretty painful.
Yeah, and they don't tell you about it. So that was probably the hardest, the biggest thing that kind of shaped my life. And then after I went through all that, I looked at my wife. I said, well, if I'm going to go do this, I want to go start a company and work with someone. So another like-minded individual I started with, and my wife's like, how much do we have coming in a month? I go, $100 a month. And she said, what? I said, yeah, but don't worry, it'll be okay.
Yeah, and so you left Data Return, and you had a number of entrepreneurial ventures and different spots you went before starting off on your own. What kind of inspired you to say, I want to quit working for others and I want to go at this alone?
Well, I think, Matt, I've always had the belief that most people are, if you look at most work-related items are a triangle. They're either builders, maintainers, or recovers. And I found out very early on, I'm a horrible maintainer. I like
As am I.
I like the hard stuff. Even in the data center, I always tell people when I talk with clients, help them with projects, I go, tell me another area or another location that you're struggling with, because that tends to resonate because so many people just want the easy button.
Yeah.
So,
If you would tell the listeners what your organization does.
yeah, so strategic development, I started, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago when I left Digital Realty Trust. And really, our premise is to help clients solve their most complex data center needs. We work with a number of private equity groups, helping them reposition assets. There are a couple select groups that we help find locations for their data center. A couple of them, it's interesting, 2 years ago, no one knew who they were. Now you can cut on MSNBC and they're talked about all the time. So it's fascinating. So we just help clients figure out the more complex data center requirement. And it is starting to change out in the marketplace.
Yeah. What's been the biggest lesson you've learned just in the last 2 years, or the biggest period of maybe grit and perseverance you've had to go through as you've gotten off on your own?
The biggest thing I've had to learn is not everyone operates the way that you do.
Yeah.
And a lot of people give a lot of lip service, but don't always live up to what they say they're going to do, which is the hardest thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always challenging when people don't share values. What drove me out on my own
Correct.
9 years ago, and so I totally get what you're talking about. Switching gears here a little bit, would love to hear maybe an inspiring story from your past that affected your perspective on grit and determination.
An inspiring story that affected, man, that's an inspiring story. You know what? I'll tell you one. Through the IT Roundtable.
Yeah.
I think probably the most inspiring thing is we've done that group is watching people grow and blossom from when we all met before. We were all sellers. We were green beans. We didn't know anything. And then just watching like where you've ended up with what you're doing with the LADA, what Scott Levy's done. I think about John, where that's probably been the most inspirational, is just watching people get to, where they've been a part of an organization and they said, hey, I'm calling the ball. I'm going to go out on my own and striking it out. Cause it's tough, man. I tell people all the time, I go, everyone wants to do what I do. But I'm like, you don't always understand what I go through or any of us go through on a day to day. You're worried about, you're doing jobs, you're floating, you're floating payroll, you're doing trips. And, unlike what you do when you do consulting, you guys get paid as you're doing it, right? For me, a lot of my stuff is contingency based. I may work on something for 18 months to 2 years before I actually get paid on it.
Yeah, that's challenging. And oftentimes being an entrepreneur is more glorious than it sounds, but hopefully we have a few nuggets for our listeners that inspires them to go at it and give it a try, but it's never as easy as it looks. And, some people are good at making it look easy. You talked about the network, and obviously, we've been part of the same IT networking organization and DFW for the last 21 years. It's crazy it's been going on that long, but just across the board, how important would you say networking and building relationships is in, building a business?
I think it's the single most important thing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people discount or don't understand networking. A lot of times, Matt, as I'm seeing executives rise up through the mountain, I always tell them forget, right? Because the fall is going to be higher and harder once they're up top, because it is not unusual for someone to start growing in their career and not have time. And there are a couple executives that are very successful. And I just remind them, hey, make sure that you're taking time out to network with people, because and I always tell them this, right? Your true friends will always take your call, right? We all get busy. But my son, who graduated from tech, works at JP Morgan Chase. That's probably the single most important thing that he's doing in his career that's helping him, is being able to get out and network. And I think that's critical. Go out and network when you don't need anything, because you never know. I think back when we started the group, just where we all were and kind of where we are now and some of our contacts, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, Mark Twain's got a great saying, dig your well before you're thirsty.
Yes.
A big believer in that. And yeah, I would attribute networking and the relationship I have with you and others in the group. A big part of my success in my career is having good friends I knew would always take the call and always be there and help always look out for me and what I was trying to do. So I think it's paramount to those listening to know, really realize how important networking is, but networking with other like-minded individuals. Any advice you give on how to find the right groups to be around or network with, or things that you've learned?
I think you just have to put yourself out there. I mean, that's probably the scariest thing most people they struggle with, is putting yourself out there. People will judge you. I mean, I've been judged. I mean, how many times have we been a part of the ITS, Carnes Intergalactic or something like that? You'll start building a core group. And what I'll tell you, there'll be people in your network that will be there for your whole entire life. But there will be some that come and go, right?
Yeah.
And it's not that they're replacing you, you're replacing them. Sometimes you're just at a point where, you guys have worked as hard as you can together, and, life gets in the way and things change.
Yeah, that is the way things go. So, you always maintain a pretty positive outlook through ups and downs and different ventures. Any practices you follow to just, really maintain a strong and positive mindset and keep that gritty perseverance?
I'd say work out, right? Find something creative to do.
Yeah.
Find something, I think this, I'm an avid cigar smoker. I always tell people, actually I started smoking cigars when I was with Data Return.
Yeah.
Right? Right before the bubble burst, we would always go down there and celebrate by the lake in Las Colinas. And it's been interesting. So that was probably 98 when we moved over from Arlington. So here it is, 25. I've been smoking cigars, nothing like I do now. And it is interesting because when you're there in a lounge and you're interacting with people, you do get to know them. You're not distracted as much.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of laughter. Found a lot of. I was actually amazed, right, going to Cigar Lounge, because you find all different types of people there, but there are a lot of business owners, people that have they've sold off their business, they've retired, they have too much time on their hands, and they want to go around to meet with like-minded individuals.
What's probably the most interesting you've learned or come across in all your days hanging around the cigar shop or with the cigar crowd?
The most interesting, probably just the variety of cigars people smoke. One, two, some of the places that we've gone. I mean, I've gone to the Dominican Republic, and I tell most people, I'm like, it's cheaper for me to go out of the country for 8 days in the Dominican Republic than what it is to go down to like 30A Rosemary Seaside for a week. And just. That was one interesting thing. I think the other thing is just getting to know them. Some of them own various businesses, and it is kind of interesting because the one thing that we've always been able to do, some of these guys have bad days.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, when you're building a business, you can't always tell your spouse what's going on, because when you're at the Christmas party, they will look at someone that you brought home and said, hey, I'm having a problem with XYZ. I think you also have the same challenge inside the company. You got to be careful not to scare the people inside the company. So I think a lot of times finding other people that you bounce ideas off of has been extremely helpful.
No, that's great. So you've created some really long-lasting relationships with your cigar smoking friends, and
we could probably tell most people just about the intricacy and some of the challenges with their business and our business.
Yeah. Obviously data centers have become all the rage with AI. Be just curious, how have you adapted just to the significant changes that are happening in the industry and kind of rode the waves of change?
It's interesting. I told my wife, I think right? We 2 years ago, we did some deals, again, very large deals that I've never thought would have been possible, well over $600+ million. And now I look where it is right now, and they're only climbing higher.
Wow.
I think the biggest challenge that's happening in the industry is now that Trump had went on TV and talked about the thing that
Stargate.
the Stargate.
Yeah.
I kind of laughed because I knew about it for over a year and a half. So what's happening right now in the industry, a lot of people are running in, a lot of land guys out there. They're like, hey, I've got 1,000 acres. We want to, this will be perfect for a data center.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of speculators. You got a lot of private equity money running in it, because private equity money right now, office is not a good asset class for them. So they want to look at it. And the other thing is, a lot of these guys like to go to cocktail parties and talk about, hey, we just deployed this latest fund and we're in artificial intelligence.
Yeah. So staying ahead of the waves of change, that's great. So we're running a little short on time here, so want to leave our listeners with some final thoughts. Any final message you'd like to share with our listeners about developing grit, about building a business, about becoming an entrepreneur, things you could leave with them, or any stories?
Yeah, I just, man, I think, if you want to be an entrepreneur, first of all, you can't be afraid, right? You got to be able to put yourself out there. You got to know people are going to critique you and cut you, sometimes infuriate the heck out of you. But if you get through it, you'll learn a lot of good life lessons. As I tell people, again, it's not easy. Everyone thinks it's easy. I've had many people say, well, hey, I just want to do what you do. And I kind of laugh because, they may do a lot of transactions. I may do 4 transactions. And if you're only doing 4 transactions in a given year, you got to be really good. So I would also say just, build a good sounding board.
Yeah.
Right? People that will listen to you when you get frustrated. Like I said, people that, again, that's realistic, that's outside of your office and sometimes outside of, your spouse.
Mm-hmm. No, well, that's great advice. Any other closing thoughts or things you'd like to share before we wrap up the episode?
No, I think, people should not be afraid to take risk, right?
Yeah.
Without risk, it does make life's journey a lot more interesting. So go grab it.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Well, Michael, thanks for being a good friend. Thanks for coming on the show. It was great to have you. To our listeners, hopefully you took some great nuggets away. Michael's got a career full of experience, so hopefully you took away some things and hopefully leave more inspired to continue on your journey. With that, we're going to wrap up the Grit Mindset with Matt Rosen. Stay gritty.